And hi, everyone. Welcome to what is it? It is the June 24th edition of our Pulse Roadmap recording, where we cover the highlights of the Microsoft roadmap so you don't have to dig through and wade through it on your own. For those of you who may not have joined us in the past, what we do is we cover three, sometimes four different categories. One is in development. That means Microsoft is working on it. They usually have a projected date, which can flex, but you at least kind of have an idea as to when it's going to come out and for what tenants it's going to be targeting. The second one is rolling out, which means it's now leaving the Microsoft confines and starting to work its way out to the various tenants. So items for GCC are making it out to GCC, so on and so forth. The final one is launched. And when something is in launch status, that means that it is actually rolled out to the particular client that it's targeted towards or tenant that it's targeted towards. And you should have it by this point in time. Occasionally, there is a fourth one called canceled, which can be everything from, oh my gosh, we have a duplicate, to, yeah, we're not going to do that. Sorry. Sorry, we got your hopes up on that one. So we don't have any of those this time. So we're just going to be going through those first three. And with that, Tamara, would you like to go ahead and get us started on in development?
Sure, there are a couple things in development I'd like to touch on. One is Microsoft Teams digital signage on Teams rooms on Windows. So users can view dynamic, engaging, and relevant content depending on who puts it up there.
True.
On the Teams rooms front of room display when the device is not in use. So admins can remotely configure tenant wide and room specific digital signage settings at scale from Teams Rooms Pro Management. Integrations with selected third party digital signage providers and content management systems are supported. Now, initial partners are AppSpace and ExoGo, and this feature is available for the Teams Rooms Pro license customers. That's coming out in August. And then also Forms. Try the new streamlined and modernized experience in Forms to create your next form. I don't know how they could make Forms simpler. So I'm excited to see this. So enjoy a simpler, modernized interface on Forms. Toggle between upgraded templates as you create your form, and then view insights and suggested actions when the responses come back in. And that's due out in July. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, I really like the idea that they're not just saying, hey, we helped put together a really nice form, go forth and prosper, but they are actually saying, hey, here's the kind of responses you're getting back. Doesn't seem like you're driving a lot of, engagement on this. Here's what you might want to do differently. Or you might want to send out another notice saying, hey, just in case you forgot. I think that's a really cool use. I'm not sure whether it's technically Copilot, but I like the fact that they are helping you get the kind of response that you're looking for in a forms form, and get the kind of feedback that you are hoping to get. So I thought that was really cool. Adam, what do you have?
Oh, there's a couple cool ones in here to mention. There's nothing too necessarily admin, although I guess one of them is pretty admin. I'm not gonna lie, but there's just a couple cool things in here. One I like to see, even though I don't heavily use this, if you use Word iOS, so if you're a Mac user on Word, although I think it's fair to note that can also be you've downloaded Word for your iPhone or iPad. You're now going to be able to basically open PDF documents and edit them as Word files. So if someone sends you a PDF, you can open up that PDF in Word for the Mac and like edit it directly. I had to deal with this today where I had someone send me a PDF and I couldn't edit it directly in Word, so I had to print it out and fill it by hand, and it felt like it was the 1980s. So this one jumped out to me when I was going through and look at it, and I'm sure people on Mac will like to see that. And like I said, Word iOS can also extend to the iPad and iPhone as well too, if you want versions there, which is kind of cool. There's a couple other ones that I thought were kind of cool related to Copilot. I think Copilot is one of those things twofold that's super cool, seeing some of the new stuff that's coming out with it. But I also think it's pretty easy to just kind of lump, oh, hey, there's a ton of AI updates in the roadmap this time. So I find myself not necessarily always paying attention to what the Copilot updates are because there's so many of them. But as I was going through, I thought this one was cool. So it's update coaching my Copilot experiences in the new outlook for the web. So the idea of coaching in Copilot is basically it will give you almost like automated help on ways that, similar to what Tom was just talking about, like you could potentially get more engagement or get better feedback from people or have the right type of tone that you're looking for. Well, I'm sure one of the areas, I know when I first started working specifically, getting the right tone in a business email was something that just takes practice. It takes being used to it and going through and doing it. Well, now Copilot is basically going to be able to be leveraged with the new Outlook for Windows, where if you're using Outlook for Windows, you can actually have it integrated with the coaching recommendations it gives you, and I'll offer to either make changes to your message or even rewrite parts of your email for you, which again gets a little Big Brother creepy. I'm sure we'll eventually get to the point where every email you get is like this automated, clearly generated by Chat GPT style thing. But again, at least I think back to, I think it's probably, I'm sure everyone listening to this, we all work in tech. Some people that work in tech are wonderful with computers and not very good with people. And I think that also extends sometimes to communication skills and everything too. So having the ability to have something maybe soften that a little bit and kind of make it more appropriate, I could definitely see this feature being used, which I thought was kind of cool. So wanted to call that out. And then the other one, the one that is kind of admin-y that I thought, okay, that one's kind of cool. So Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal, which is something I talk about a ton. Data loss prevention for groups. I thought this was important to note. So up until now, if you've gone through and you've been doing data loss prevention, when you go through to scope it and create the policies, there's like 9 different subsections for the different apps that you can go through and do. You can have a policy that affects Exchange messages. You can have a policy that affects groups. You can have a policy that affects SharePoint. You can have a policy that affects Teams chat, Teams channels, and one-on-one messages were always considered separate from that. What it looks like they're basically doing when they're going through and doing these updates, if you're doing data loss prevention policies, so keep in mind, data loss prevention policies like, hey, I want to make sure credit cards aren't leaving my organization in a way that I don't want, or I want to make sure that, people aren't going through and sharing PII if I'm a healthcare organization. Now, by default, when you're going through and creating M365 group scoping, which keep in mind groups is kind of the glue that holds everything together, it's going to automatically include one-on-one chats with that as well, too. This is an interesting one to me. I think it's good that you're including one-on-one chats. I think as Teams has developed as a default communication platform in the IT world, it's becoming increasingly common, at least I know for me, to have chats on Teams with people outside of Planet. My customers that are also on 365 and stuff like that, it's becoming increasingly common to be able to find people on Teams and communicate with them. But I also know, coming from someone who lives in the world of compliance, a lot of companies specifically exclude one-on-one chats from their compliance ordinance because it's considered informal communication and not considered necessarily covered in the same way that like an actual chat in a team would be or something like that. So interested to see where they're going with this and what it does. I think natively it's probably a good thing when we're talking about DLP, if you're wanting to make sure stuff like credit cards aren't being leaked out of your organization and stuff like that. But I'm not sure morally I'm fully on board with the idea of just one-on-one chat should always be included and stuff like that. Because I think there's somewhat of an understanding, and maybe you could argue there shouldn't be an understanding, but at least for me, I morally like the idea that my one-on-one chat is somewhat more protected from company oversight than other stuff. I'm fine with the idea of like communication compliance and looking to make sure that I'm not like sexually harassing someone or I'm not being, like a racist asshole or something. But the idea of going through and looking for stuff deeper than that, I don't know how I fully feel about that. Again, this is just data loss prevention. So in theory, it could just be making sure you're not like sending someone externally credit cards or something like that. So because of that, I think I'm a little bit more okay with this. It's not like they're trying to monitor it for other stuff than that. But again, anytime you get into automatically including one-on-one chats and sort of overprotective things,
more personal,
I get a slightly uneasy feeling in my gut, if that makes sense. So we'll see where they go this long term. But for right now, I think it's okay.
See, and I feel like if you're at work, even your conversations,
I mean,
they
modernly,
need to be
I
at
think
a
that's
different
probably
level.
and I think that, let's be real, anyone who works in a modern company that understands technology, you probably should be operating with the assumption that your communication isn't completely private if you're using work tools, like whether or not that's going to be the case, whatever your employer decides to do, for your own well-being and protection, you should probably operate under the assumption that that is the case.
That you are being watched or could be watched at any time.
Makes sense. Well, I've got a couple that I will go ahead and talk about, and they are both for hashtag New Outlook for Windows. The first one is open attachments in desktop apps from the new Outlook for Windows. So in the new Outlook for Windows, users can now open attachments of all types in their respective desktops app by just double clicking them. I think that's awesome. I know that a lot of times launching in the browser is like, oh, it's a quick way to go see it, no problem, that's great. But other times it's like, sorry, they sent me a spreadsheet and I really want to deal with it in the Excel client because I'm old school and I like that. So I think the fact that they are now accommodating that and not just always defaulting to, hey, we're sticking it in the browser and I'm sure you can make it work. I think that's a good thing coming out in August, and that is actually coming out to GCC and worldwide. And then the other one, not really a big thing for me because I don't do a lot of foldering, but for people who do tons of folders, they're going to love this one. And that is, uh, once again, in the new Outlook for Windows and the web, they are going to allow you to pin your favorite folders to the top of your folder list. So easily access your most used folders by pinning them at the top of your left nav bar in the new Outlook for Windows and web. This feature streamlines navigation, ensuring your important folders are always within reach. So I can see if you're in the habit of actually putting things in a particular folder and it's a folder that may be 2 or 3 deep and you just want to be able to get to it right away, being able to pin that to the top, knowing that you don't have to work down some navigation path to get there, I think is a really cool thing. Don't get your hopes up really high though, because it's December of 2024, but you all are getting it. So, yeah, kind of trade off there.
Although to be fair, we're halfway through the year already. It seems kind of crazy that we are, but like we're almost through the month of June.
It is really weird because when I go through the roadmap stuff for our internal stuff, I'm like, this is coming out in late August. I'm like, that's so far, and it's not that far away. It's really close now.
Don't worry. I can affirm, and really all of our friends up in the Northeast can now too. The oppressive heat is already here. August is not that far away.
Yeah, it's not. In fact, we're probably 90 outside right now here in Minnesota. So yeah, good stuff. So anybody else have any more in development things before we move on or roll on to rolling out?
I see what you did there.
That's why they don't let me drive very often here, folks. So with that, I'll go ahead and switch it up a little bit. Adam, why don't you go ahead and get started on this one?
I understand you're letting the gorgeous people go first. I'm only going to do one this time. We're going to go ahead and say there's one that I thought was cool. I think we even talked about this when it was originally documented out there in development, but I thought it was kind of cool. Outlook is now going to allow you to show online archive storage in the new Outlook for Windows and the web.
Yeah.
So you're going through and using, everyone kind of knows by default when you have your email, you have archive now too. I think in the world with how much data we deal with, it's something that happens more and more common as people are going to start leaning on the archive. But up until now, if you wanted to see the archive, it was kind of an arduous process to go through and get there. Now with the default Outlook for the web client, you're just going to be able to see your archive in there, almost like it's just added in as another mailbox. I think this is good for a couple reasons. One, it's nice and easy to be able to go through and see it. But effectively, this is a step towards almost making it as functional as your normal storage anyways, which is really gonna make it as a step better because you're gonna be able to see the mail that you have archived. It's almost like you're gonna have the mail in your mailbox anyway. So kind of cool to see. This is almost like there's a much larger mailbox for the people out there that need it. I think there's probably only 1 in 100 of us that are really, hurt by the size, but those who have are gonna love this update. So
great.
Tamara, what do you have?
I've got a couple. Microsoft Teams workflows, easier discoverability of workflow templates. So users will be able to discover which workflow templates or which workflow template was used when they receive a workflow card in chats and channels. So team workflow cards posted from a template will now include a link to the template used. Users will then be able to open the workflow template and create their own automated Teams workflows to save time when completing routine tasks. I think that's great. I've often wondered, like in SharePoint, what kind of list or library was used because I want to emulate that and I don't want to start from the ground up. So now that that's going to be available in Teams for workflows, I think that's going to be great. The other one was Outlook RSVP improvements in event context menu in new Outlook for Windows and web. So changes to the new events or changes to the event's right-click context menu will make it easier to respond to meeting invitations from the calendar surface. All RSVP options will be on the first level of the menu. There will also be separate options to respond to either all events in the series or just the current instance. This update will be available in New Outlook for the web and Windows, or hashtag New Outlook for Windows.
Yeah, I think
I
that
like
was
their
kind of
hashtag.
cool.
That was on several of them.
Yeah.
Yes, they are
So
loving that
that
one.
should be coming out worldwide in June, and that's including everybody: GCC High, DoD, GCC. That's everybody.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to do the RSVPs without actually having to go into the calendar entry itself.
Mm-hmm.
So since they took the three things that I had highlighted, I'm going to go a little bit larger
I'm
picture
going to
now.
say, they is, I guess I had one, but they is a strong term when I only did one thing, Tom.
Don't judge. Just let me go with you here. So there were a number of items that were for Copilot in Excel. There were a couple in development. One was Copilot in Excel custom chart and pivot table creation, which I think is great if you're not an Excel person like I'm not. And there's also summarized text columns. Great things. In the rolling out, there is also Copilot Excel. Copilot works on any selection, and Excel support for data ranges resembling tables. Now, the only reason I bring these up, other than the fact to let you know that Excel and Copilot are doing cool things, is this last week I was in a situation where I'm trying to reconcile some numbers with a file share migration we're doing. And there's like 14,000 lines of data. And I'm like, I'm going to have to crawl through these again and try to find the 9 items that I don't know why they're not showing up, but I don't know what I'm looking for, but I need to find one of these things is not like the other, and each file share may have like 10 or 15 or more entries, but you just need to find that one where somebody's claimed ownership of it. And maybe you're trying to find the ones that don't have any ownership claimed. So I'm working with my coworker and I said, so Josh, I really don't think that Copilot can do this with Excel, but it would be really cool if Copilot could go in and say, for any group of file shares with the same name, only show me those file shares that don't have a current owner selected for them. And like 5 minutes later, he came back and said, okay, here's your 70 items out there that don't have owners listed for that. I'm like, you're kidding me. And so today I started going through them and I was looking for 9 that weren't showing up. And 61 of them were ones that, yeah, that was a valid combination. There were 9 that were not actually claimed by anybody and we hadn't done migrations on them yet. I'm like, oh my God, I so love Copilot and want it for Excel. So that was really cool. And again, they're continuing to do more and more with Copilot and Excel. And I think Excel's Copilot is one where you can start to ask some really cool questions and get some really cool results, especially if you're not a person who knows how to manipulate the data inside and out. So just keep an eye open for that because it seems like every time we have Copilot things that show up on the roadmap here, there's usually 1 or 2 Excel ones. And I think that Excel and Copilot is where a lot of the really cool stuff is coming out in terms of being able to do neat things that you haven't been able to do before. So that's cool. I'm going to assume that we have no more rolling out. And with that, we will go on to launched. We only have 3 items in launch. So would one or both of you like to take those? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and take one of them. And this kind of was something that I think we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Copilot and forms, like Tamara said, how can you make forms any easier? Well, you can have smart reminders to gain higher engagement from audiences. So this is Copilot Smart Reminder will monitor and proactively share engagement and submission status to a form's owner in order to suggest follow-up actions. For example, if engagement is low, form owners can leverage Copilot to send reminders reminders for forms or quizzes quickly. Also, Copilot Smart Reminder can remind owners to check the insights when there are sufficient responses to make decisions. I think this is great anytime you don't have to sit there going click, refresh, refresh, refresh. If it's actually going to prompt you, it's like, hey, it's been a couple days since you looked, you've had 10 responses. You might want to go check on what's going on. So that should be rolled out to everybody now if you have Copilot in your environment. So keep an eye open for that. Adam, Tamara.
Go ahead, Tamara.
Microsoft Teams intelligent meeting recap for transcripts meetings only. So intelligent recap will support meetings with only transcript enabled without recording enabled. Beg your pardon. In the case where only transcript is enabled for a meeting, the features from Intelligent Recap that users can access are the AI-generated meeting notes, AI-generated tasks, and name mentions. Intelligent Recap features are also available as a part of the Copilot for Microsoft 365 license. This should be rolled out worldwide to standard multi-tenants.
I think that is a cool feature. Hopefully one day we'll get to play with Copilot, and that's going to be one that I'm just going to love in meetings, to where you get the information coming and say, oh, here's the notes, here's what happened, here's who's been assigned XYZ. I'm like, I so want that. So, and the last one, you want this one, or you just want me to take it and roll us
Go
out
ahead,
here?
Tom.
Okay. Microsoft Teams closed captioning support in Teams walkie-talkie. I just love the fact that Teams has a walkie-talkie feature. Walkie-talkie users can now view captions on the walkie-talkie home screen for transmissions being received. I just like saying walkie-talkie, I think. That is rolled out. That's coming worldwide in GCC. So if you're either one of those and you play with walkie-talkie, you should have it by now. And with that, that pretty much covers our roadmap for this week. Tamara, Adam, any last comments, observations?
I'm just glad the list wasn't 500 things long.
Oh man, that was just crazy. Like 2 weeks ago, they were doing like major cleanup, or not even major cleanup. I think it was like, let's put everything out there. And that's the week we didn't have anything because we were swamped. So, well, with that, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. And we will do this again next week if we get a roadmap that's not 540 some odd items long. So with that, everybody enjoy your week, and we will talk with you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye now.